the departments and agencies. Just like in the Department of Defense, the really important operational kinds of things are being done by the combatant commands. And in the future, if we have to have integrated effort, it's going to occur someplace in an interagency space in an organization that's not created. The Congress, to be honest though, the Congress is fearful of congressional reform. You know, as I start talking about these ideas, I can hear their knees knocking. But it is going to happen. Lots of changes have to take place on the Hill. They have to have some mechanism to do whole of government, to integrate, to think about this. And so our idea of having representatives come from the various committees of jurisdiction, not necessarily to represent those committees, but to provide their expertise to do that whole of government work, you know, I think intellectually people have accepted the idea. The Congress, somebody had made mention of this was going to be a huge education effort. And in fact, that's true. The Congress knows very little about the interagency because it doesn't work that beat. And it also is not a strong sense of modern organizational practice. And so there's going to have to be lots of work done on Capitol Hill. And that's why when I said we have 300 national security professionals involved in this, and we're probably going to need 30,000 national security professionals to really tip this, is because there's going to have to be a huge effort, lots of influence, lots of people with power and prestige engaged in this to make it happen. Yes.
Sir. Hello. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Holdenheim with U.S. SOCOM. Just had a quick, well, maybe not so quick question for you, but I was intrigued by your discussion about an interagency budget, a national security kind of budget. Do you envision that there would be regional kinds of planning, strategy, and policy capacity within this national security structure, talking about, much like the combatant commands do on the DoD side, to drive the sort of priorities for that budget? And if so, do you envision that the Department of Defense budget would sort of migrate away from, you know, legacy kinds of funding toward supporting those interagency priorities and that interagency regional strategy planning, et cetera, that would fall under this guidance document you spoke about?
Well, I think, you know, my vision for this is that eventually there'll be interagency regional commands that'll be headed by a civilian, and the combatant command will be in a subordinate position to that. There'll still be some cut out to the National Command Authority for operational and tactical military activities. But if we're really determined that we're going to manage national security from a regional perspective, we'll need to create those. Now, maybe they'll be like the combatant commands. They won't have much of a role in budgeting, but they'll have their sort of their integrated priority lists, which could influence things, and maybe it'll help move us towards what are the real challenges out there, you know, from a regional perspective. But you could also think about these interagency teams from a global perspective. You know, whether it's cybersecurity or space, you know, all of those issues that are cutting across many parts of our government. Domestic IEDs. You know, the Department of Homeland Security has an Office of Bombing Prevention, but you have FBI over in Justice. You have the Joint IED Defeat Organization in the Department of Defense. You had alcohol, tobacco, and firearms with some expertise in Justice. And, you know, you need to think about, well, how am I going to pull all of that expertise together in capabilities? And there's a real need for, you know, some of these interagency kinds of organizations. And one thing that I often try to stress is we have a Department of Homeland Security, but it only has like 40% of the government's capacity for defending the homeland. The rest of it's in defense, or it's in justice, or it's in health and human services, or it's in the Department of Transportation. It's all over the government, yet we don't have those interagency mechanisms that permit us to put all of that together into an effective team. But You know, I don't know how successful, if we had interagency regional commands and they had integrated priority lists, how much they would influence the budget, but it sure would help to have somebody out there from that perspective sort of saying, here for this region, here are the kinds of things we really need.
One more here, sir.
Yes, I'd like you to kind of give as much quantification or detail in the relationship of the transformation information sharing, whether or not it's the influence of the Federal CIO Council with just the transformation that's going on for BTA with financial systems and human capital management in terms of being able to know what a government employee has to offer the government, how invisible that will be to someone who's looking for those KSA based on skills and abilities. Personally, I just think that the stovepiping of the actual data that we do retain and or create accounts for a very large percentage of our inability to be reactive.
Right. Well, you know, I mentioned that we're proposing that there be a chief knowledge officer at the National Security Council, but we're also proposing in each department and agency, National Security Department and agency, there'll be a chief knowledge officer, and then there'll be a federal chief knowledge officer council to begin to work on all of these issues. But lots of the details of this, you know, is yet to be worked by our issue teams. But in part, you know, we have all of these legacy systems, you know, how the individual departments and agencies have decided they were going to, you know, collect and manage their information. That really prevents us from sharing it widely across the government. So this is a topic that's going to take some really important. If we do not make these changes, we are going to suffer more, and we're going to have more setbacks. We're going to waste more resources. Our influence around the world is going to diminish. We have got to get on top of it. And to your question, while we need the president, we also need all of you working on this issue. It's that big. That boulder is really big, and we're pushing it up a pretty steep hill. So I'm looking forward to your engagement as well. Anyway, thanks for your questions.